There we go. All right, all right. Okay, I am so excited today to have a chance to speak with Cola, Miss Cola Bennett. Now we've had a little bit of history here in that we ran a story about 3 years ago. I believe it was 3 years ago, and at that time you were just publishing your book, and you had been working really hard to get it out. I remember, it was a busy time for you, and so I'm so glad that we can come back and have another conversation today. You look great. And I saw you do something recently on social media where you read a chapter from a portion of your book, rather. And just to introduce you to everyone who's going to be watching this, you are Cola Bennett, and you are a poet, an author of your book, which is your autobiography, and it's called C.O.LA, and that stands for Casualty of Love's Apology. And I love that. I love that because I remember seeing you on various platforms, and when I began to hear more and more about your story, and I first saw you on Erica Alita's, she had a show, and she had you on there as a guest. You were on that show and you talked about your life and your journey, and I was like, I got to get in touch with this woman. So thank you. Welcome. I'm so glad to see you. How have you been?
I've been well. I've been really well. I've been doing a lot of things on wellness over the last little bit, and just focusing in on what that means for self-care and moving forward. So that's been primarily my goal, along with working to get all these other things done behind the scenes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you, like I mentioned, you read a portion of your book that I thought was just, the words were so powerful when I saw you share that at a church recently. And could you read that portion for us, please?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He changed me. Now I can never go back. February 2014. The doctors told me my child had 3 days to live. He changed me. Gave me that peace that superseded all other emotions and rationalities. The doctors had given up, leaving me an empty shell in the room with thoughts of nothing but doom. My birthday present was the decision to sign my baby's DNR. Do not resuscitate. Do not resuscitate. No resuscitation. Eliminating the hesitation, my anticipation and determination speak louder than my irritation. Do everything you can to save my son. He's lived past the predictions of death. I have no words left. No tears left. Realizing I was left with only 2 choices. Either I die or I surrender. He changed me. And I've always grown up with an understanding of faith and of him, but I've done too many things in my life to cry out and expect his help to win. I lived a life loving nothing but sin. Thin timeline caused my mind to see that life is different. Differently is the only explanation for the love I have for my son who saved me. Me turned to we. But I was ready to lay my life down if I could see my baby grow. There's nothing more desperate than crying out, help me, save him. To the Father who's always been listening, heal him and let him live. My only reason to live has been him. Don't take him away. I'll do whatever it takes. I surrender. Please. He changed me. The minute I gave up fighting, the minute I asked for forgiveness, he changed me. And it most definitely has not been easy. I went from wanting to die if my son left to a person strong enough to hold him as he took his last breath. Reminiscing on the last few years, I exhaled the last pieces to my heart, knowing God's been working hard to build it back through love. He changed me. Jesus changed me. My faith changed me. My son changed me. And even when the hard days come, coming from where I'm from, the day he changed me is the day I stopped holding my breath. With nothing left, I can never go back. Thank you.
Wow. 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 I cannot imagine what it's been like to go from the stage of praying and saying, because you believed that God was going to heal your son.
Mm-hmm.
And just to bring everyone into the conversation, C.O.LA lost her son, KK, when he was 8 years old. And she had prayed specifically for God to heal, and she believed that he would be healed. Doctors said, no, he's not going to make it. He only has a few days to live, but he was a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
He was a fighter. And so for you to go from this place of God, I know you're going to heal my son, to losing him and then arriving where you are now, where you can look back and just have an appreciation for that journey. How have you been able to do that?
First, it started off with me understanding my son's purpose. And so I looked at, people always say when you pass away, some people pass away before their time, but others pass away when they have served their purpose on this earth. And so I took a look at like, what was my son's purpose? And I looked at when he came into my life. He came into my life at a time when I was broken, when I was walking around, I was like a zombie, where I didn't want to live. I was so frustrated. I had gone through so much trauma at age 14 up until 16 when I got pregnant with him. And so he came at a time where if he didn't come in my life at that time, I probably wouldn't have survived. And so he came to give me the love that I was missing. He came to distract me from my own destruction. And the time that we had together, we created amazing memories. So whenever I got sad, whenever I thought about it, I just held on to the memories that we had and the times that we got to spend together. And I'm like, what impact did he have on my life? And from that perspective, it gave me a lot more peace to understand, okay, he's gone now, but the times that we had, he impacted me for the better. He changed me for the better. And that's what I've been able to hold on to.
Wow. Wow. What year was it when he passed?
It was 2014.
2014. Okay. So 7 years have gone by. What has your experience, what will you say about the grieving process? Because from what I understand about grief is that it comes in waves. There are times where it's kind of calm and you're doing life, doesn't hit you as hard at sometimes, and then sometimes out of nowhere, here it comes, and you're overwhelmed with the feelings of loss. What has your experience with grief been?
My experience has been exactly that. It has come at different, grief for me has come in stages. It doesn't all heal at once. It heals like one level, you feel a little bit better, and next level, you feel a little better, next level, and that way. I don't know if I necessarily went through the 5 stages that they explain. Maybe just because my understanding of God and my relation, my faith, it just carried me through different stages, or just at different times. But the interesting thing with grief is, so when my son's birthday would come around, and his celebration of life, people would flood me with, I'm so sorry, stay strong, all these amazing messages. But those weren't the times that I was weak. Those are the times where I expected, like I knew it was coming, so I had enough time to mentally prepare myself for it. But it was the days like maybe Christmas or just like a random Tuesday that I saw a car drive by, and he loves cars. Those were the days when I felt the weakest. And people around me didn't actually understand that. So they only tried to support on days when they felt it was hard for me. And I was like, well, I'm cool today.
Yeah.
Check in the next 2 weeks. So maybe I won't be cool in 2 weeks. So grief for me it's come in waves. And focusing on positive things has really helped pull me through. Music has definitely been a huge play in my grief journey, and just getting to a different part. So I don't think grief can all be explained all at one time. I definitely feel like there's different levels to it, and just because you feel better one day doesn't mean that you're not grieving. Doesn't mean that you've overcome it. It means that you've overcome one level of it, and you might go through another level at another time.
Yeah. Yeah. You touched briefly on how your son came into your life at a time that was very pivotal,
Mm-hmm.
because you were going through a lot of different things.
Yes.
Now, because I know a little bit about your story, I know that when I believe you was it 14
Mm-hmm.
when you were raped?
Mm-hmm.
and you actually have been raped multiple times. It wasn't
Yes,
even just that time. And so that kind of catapulted into just a lot of emotional turmoil.
yes.
So in a way, somebody taking away your innocence without your consent is a loss of a different kind. So how can you walk us through that process of like losing, at that time, the power to actually engage in sexual activity and consent to that was taken away from you, those times when you were sexually assaulted? How did you deal with that loss?
To be honest, I didn't deal with it. I didn't deal with it properly at the time. And so typically, not typically, but sometimes women go one of two ways. They deal with it by either trying to get their power back and control the situation, or they just close up and they lock down. I desperately tried to get my control back. So I went on a rampage, like different guys that I talked to, I made sure that I was in control of when and how, and so I was heavily promiscuous when I was younger. And so when I say I didn't really deal with it, it's because I was going from one person to the next person to the next person. I didn't allow situations to heal me. I felt like my healing would be through getting one over on another person, or making sure in this relationship I didn't get played, or in this relationship I didn't get played. And so it wasn't until in my 20s when I really sat down and I took a look at everything. I'm like, okay, I need to heal, or this is what happened with that, and that's why I wasn't able to heal it, and because I was just continually looking for love, looking for love, looking for love. And so, and what I would say to anybody who's been through that situation is heal. Make sure you take the time to heal and to grieve those pains that is felt and so deeply in our hearts. Like those are the ones that we need the most time, to just learn how to respect ourselves again, learn how to value ourselves, because the respect was taken, the value was taken. And although it was taken by somebody else, we still have, it's our body. So we still have the ability to control it and to learn how to love ourselves again, and to learn um, how to react in different situations.
Yeah, yeah. And you were working with a lot of different things because many people didn't believe you at the time that
Yes,
had happened.
yes.
Yeah,
And the main people who didn't believe me was my family, and those are the people closest to me. And so the gang rape that happened at 14 led into the molestation from my uncle, because my support system failed me essentially. Um, my support system wasn't there, and so they still allowed me to go to my grandmother's house where all my cousins were making fun of me. And the one person who seemed to look after me was, this individual was my aunt's boyfriend. He was the only person who would like leave her alone, don't bother her, all that stuff. And what I didn't know at the time is he was grooming me, and the abuse started after that. So all the times that I'm saying, hey, I don't want to go to my grandma's house, I want to stay home, my parents, unfortunately, they just didn't know any better, and so they didn't understand that they were perpetuating the abuse versus keeping me safe, which they thought they were doing.
yeah, yeah. So what is your relationship like today with those family members?
With my parents, it's a lot better. I live with them right now. After my son passed, I had to, like, eventually I made my way back home, and this is where I've just been rebuilding my life. When it comes to my grandma, I love my grandma dearly. I will always love my grandma dearly. But as for my cousins, because I didn't really grow up with them, and because what I did grow up with was like a lot of bullying, I don't really talk to them that much. Um, there was it always felt like I was forced to go. When parents always force you, go say hi, go do this, go.
Yeah, yeah,
They don't understand how detrimental that is to a person being forced to be in an area with people. So whenever I would go, because we always go to my grandma's house for like Thanksgiving and Christmas. But what would happen is every time I went, I myself would be asking questions in my head. Are they talking about me? Are they looking at me weird? Are they all
yeah,
these? So like it was, even if they were saying nothing at all, me myself, the torment was on myself, it was in my mind. And so I believe it was, I don't remember what year, but one of the years when the whole Me Too movement came out, I had done a video talking about how my uncle had my aunt's boyfriend had molested me, and I hadn't talked. That's the one thing. So I talk about the rapes openly. The molestation I haven't talked about as openly, and this is the first time that I talked about it freely. on social media. And as soon as my family, I was in a group chat, WhatsApp group chat, and as soon as they found it, they began getting in on me. They started cussing me out. They said it's not true, all this stuff. And I said to them, I'm like, and then some were saying it's not true. The others were saying, well, prove it then. I'm like, well, if you want proof, read my book. It's all in there. And so after that, I decided that I was going to come out of the group chat because I took a stand for myself. I'm like, I'm no longer going to engage in what I consider to be toxic behavior just because they were family. And for me, that was when I got my freedom. That's when I took a stand for my voice. And so I haven't been back to Thanksgiving. I haven't been back to Christmas. I've chosen to, if need be, stay here by myself where I felt more safe and secure than to put myself in a situation where I'm just there just because it's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. 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 You know, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, actually, and we were talking about how oftentimes, because we're conditioned growing up to do what's expected of us, we end up not paying attention to our intuition or not being good advocates for ourselves. And then we often find ourselves causing ourselves so much pain, emotional pain, because we're trying to fit into what society or our parents or culture has told us how we should act. You know, and I like that example that you gave, because oftentimes you do that with kids. Oh, go greet your elders, go greet, you know, be respectful and all of that. But sometimes, like, children have this strong intuition often. And sometimes if they're not taking to somebody, there's something there.
That, and by forcing them to go, you're forcing them to ignore their intuition, and so they grow up ignoring this thing inside them because they're like, oh well, yes, I may not feel good about it, but they told me I have to go regardless. And so for years, because I was always forced to go to my grandma's house, then I felt a lot of guilt when I didn't go, even though I knew it wasn't healthy for me. And so I finally had to like take a stand for myself, and this is like only a couple years ago when I'm like well into my late 20s, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna take a stand. I'm not gonna stand for this. It doesn't matter if they're not talking about me, whatever. This is how I feel safe, and I'm not gonna go.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And, you know, it's funny how sometimes we feel like, oh, you know, as we get older, there's certain things that we have to unlearn, right? And that's one of those things. And sometimes we feel like it's something that we should have had a grasp on when we're younger. But like, I tell you, I am just in my early 40s, and there's some things that I am just, it's just clicking to me now. I'm like, listen, why am I doing this? I don't want to do it. Like, it
Exactly.
just yeah, forget about what is expected of me, you know.
Exactly.
And so, and I love that you're owning that right now and just saying, you know, these are the lines, these are my boundaries that I'm drawing to protect myself.
Yes.
Can you take me back to the day that your son passed and kind of walk me through your emotions that day?
Yeah, so my son had the doctors had consistently, so he lived for 6 months after they said he was gonna die. And throughout those 6 months we had, like, you call it death scares, where they're like, okay, well, this weekend is not looking good, and he overcame that. And so I got to a point where I was getting frustrated with him. I'm like, y'all keep saying he's gonna die and he's not, so just stop and figure out how to treat him. They didn't want to treat him because of the underlying condition of muscular dystrophy. Basically, when you have underlying conditions, they just look at the percentage of you bouncing back and they weigh it off there, and that's their own judgment. But for me, I was like, God can heal him. God's gonna heal him, and that was my stance. The day he, but it was up and down throughout the 6 months. It was really up and down. There's moments that I was cool, and there's moments that I had a lot of peace, and there's moments that I just, like, I broke down when I saw him really swollen, when I saw that he couldn't walk, when I saw he couldn't do the things that he used to love to do, when he couldn't even drink water, which is a basic necessity in life. Like, those things really broke me. The morning he passed, though, my parents were at the hospital. We were playing like Kirk Franklin in the room. And in the morning, my dad and mom just gave him a kiss bye. My dad went to go officiate a wedding. I said, hey, I'll see you in a little bit. He woke up, I think it was around like 9 something. And said he had to go to the bathroom. I took him off the machines. I called the nurse. We unhooked him from the machines. My sister said, hey, you went to bed. And he was really incoherent. And as he stood up to go to the bathroom, he fell back in my arms. And I put him on the bed and he was gone. And for a while, those moments just stayed with me, that I was there for his last breath and what that felt like. But when I was actually in the hospital room that day, I was at peace. I was like, okay, God, well, I mean, you can still heal him. I'm like, you raised Lazarus from the dead. There's no reason why you can't do anything for my son. You can still bring him back. And so my sister jumped up and she was screaming his name, and the doctors came in and they were working on him because I had rescinded my DNR so they would start working on him. But I stood there and I prayed. That was my thing. I prayed, I prayed, I prayed. I put on one of the most colorful summer dresses I could ever have. I was just a bucket of color and peace that actual day when it happened. And I said, "What? Regardless of what happened, God's going to take care of us." And so I just kept praying. I just kept praying. And for 8 days, I went on a water fast, and I believed for resurrection. And that's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It seems like, as you're talking about it, it seems like it's something, it's still fresh in your memory. Like you can recall so much from that day. And I, I just can't imagine being in that moment and experiencing all that you went through at that time. Okay, what have you learned about the grieving process that you didn't know before?
What I've learned, I mean, I learned a lot about anxiety. I learned a lot about depression. I learned the importance of putting a self care plan in place. That's one of the biggest lessons I learned. That when we're going through the situation, I stopped taking care of myself. And because I stopped taking care of myself, it was a little bit harder to navigate afterwards. I didn't already have a routine in place. I didn't already have go-tos of what my safe space was. I was just in like the space of just like, I don't know what's next. I don't know what to do. I'm gonna just lay here. And so now I would say make sure you have a self-care plan in place. Make sure you know what your go-tos are. Make sure you know what helps with your mindset. Make sure you know what gives you a little bit of joy, and pull on those when you need it, when the moments are the roughest for you. Because if not, you can just go completely under, and there's times when it can get really dark, and if you don't have something to pull you back up out of it, you might just succumb to it.
Yeah, yeah. And one of those things for you have been, you mentioned the self-care. You also have relied on your faith to
Yes.
really get you through.
Yes.
Um, can you talk about some of those conversations that you've had with God? Because I'm sure there's been a whole range of emotions, from anger, from disappointment, from, all kinds of thoughts and feelings that you've had towards God. Can you shed some light on that?
Yes, absolutely. So I got saved a week after my son was out of the hospital. I'm a pastor's daughter. I grew up in church, but me and God, we kind of had like this funny relationship, especially because I've been through all the traumas. But the time when my son got sick, I tried to make a deal with God, and I said, "Hey, if you save my son, I'll give my life to you." That was my deal, because I said, if you make him die, then I'm gonna go too. And so we had to just like balance it out, and I think God was probably laughing at me. He's like, okay, whatever. But I got saved, and that was the starting of this journey in this faith walk that I have with God, in healing, in complete healing over my past and everything. The one thing I didn't have was anger against God. That's one thing I didn't have, because I understood the situation. I had gotten a chance. It's funny because when my son was born and we got the diagnosis, my mom was upset. But I said, but who are we to say anything? Whenever God's ready to take him, he'll take him. Until then, we just enjoy him. And I was reminded of that after the fact. And I was like, well, God, I didn't actually expect you to take him. But you know.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Yes.
but a lot of my conversations with God has been like, God, help me. God, I need you. God, give me hugs. Like, I ask God for hugs, and just for this comfort and for his peace. I ask him a lot for his peace, because his peace is what carries me through and sustains me through the grief process. Without peace, I feel tormented. Without peace, so many things go off in my mind. And so I started writing letters to God, and just detailing as honestly as possible where I'm at, what I feel. Sometimes people feel like you can't, because he's God, you can't say, God, I'm upset, or I'm this, I'm that. And I just laid it flat out. God, this is where I'm at. And I don't want to move, but let me know where to go. And so God and I, we really worked up to the season that I'm in right now, which is joy. and where I'm finally feeling, and this is 7 years, and I'm finally experiencing God's joy and His love and His hand over my life. I had, sorry. So I'm doing this prayer thing right now, and so I woke up this morning and I was praying at 5 a.m. and I had this dream of a double anointing, and so just double anointing being poured over me, and I just woke up so happy because I've been praying for this, I've been believing for it, that I'm walking into a different season, especially when in September a lot fell apart for me. And so in the past, when things would fall apart, I'd be full of anxiety. I'd be full of like, I'd jump right back in depression. Like, why me? Why is this happening? Like, isn't my life been hard enough? Like, what's going on? And September, when things fell apart, I said, all right, well, God, it's all you. So the peace and the maturity that I've gotten over the years has grown, where things can fall apart all around me, and now I understand, well, it's in God's hands. It's not in my hands. There's nothing that I can do about it. There's nothing that I can do to change it. What I can do is give it to the Father who loves me and just allow His peace to wash over me until things change.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I so admire about you is how, you know, your relationship with God and how you choose to surrender at several certain points in your life. You talked about when you were engaged at one point, and that was the time when your son was very ill, and you're going through, you know, the hospitals and all of those things, and you were just like, okay, you got your confirmation, and you're like, take off the ring. This is it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So that was an interesting time. I woke up in the hospital that morning, and my first thought was, for whatever reason, I'm like, I don't think I should be engaged right now. But at the same time, I was like, it's just a thought. So that the same night that I got saved, the same woman was talking to me about relationships. And because I had been in so many horrible relationships, she's like, I'd finally gotten into a relationship that was better than all the other ones that I've been through. And she said, sometimes what you deem is better is not God's best. And that has always stuck with me. That because I thought it was better, I thought, well, this is the best it's going to get. And she's like, God could have even better than that for you. And I just couldn't fathom it. And so I took her advice and said, oh, okay, you know what? I am going through a lot right now. So I think I'm just gonna put a pause on it. I'm gonna just tell him, you know what? I just gotta pause it. I gotta figure some things out because I'm like, he was also sick, and I'm like, I can't take care of two of you at the same time. I can't. And he was in the States at the time. I'm like, I can't be taking care of you in the States, and I can't be taking my son here. And my son is the most important thing to me. So let's just put a pause on it, and then we'll just revisit it. You know. But I was still, gonna stay with him. That was the deal. And by the Sunday, that happened, I think on like a Friday, Saturday. By the Monday, God had sent somebody from Facebook. Never met her before. Never had a conversation with her before. She came to pray at my house, just to pray to make sure everything was anointed and favored. And by the time she was done praying, she said, "By the way, the man that you're with is not for you." Like as clear English as it could get. That he is not the one. He's not the one God has for you. God has somebody else. Like it could not get any clearer. You know when we ask God for signs, and God like puts it in our face, and we're like, I don't know about that sign, but
Yeah.
God made sure that I understood the assignment, that I heard the sign. And so I took off my ring, I put it down, and I sent my ex-fiance, or my fiance at the time, I sent him another email because I originally sent him an email saying pause, sent him another email that said, God said no. And I kind of just like, I'm like, yeah, we can't move forward with this. I'm ending it. Of course, he was heartbroken. He didn't understand. But for me, I was like, well, if I made a deal with God that I'm surrendering my life so you can save my child, there's nothing that's going to stand in my way of getting that happening. If you are in like this relationship with you is going to hinder me and my son's healing, you have to go. And
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
literally that simple for me, that I'm like, I'm not letting anything come before my relationship with God or my healing for my son. And that was it. And I had a friend who asked me, she's like, did you even love him? Like, how do you walk away so quickly? And I'm like, because it's God. And God knows best for me. He knows better than I could ever know. And now that I fast forward to now and I look at what my ex-fiance has done with his life, I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. You absolutely knew that where he was headed, where I was headed, he would have just brought me down and it wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah, yeah. You know, if only we can have that wisdom in the moment when when it's not clear, right? Because at the time being, like, I love, sometimes you make those bargains with God, like, Lord, okay, you do this, and then I'm going to do this, right? And I love the honesty in your relationship with God, and just how you just approach Him with just, this is what it is. This is how I'm feeling, and this is what I want you to do. And you just have this boldness about you, which the Bible says we should, come to the God's throne with boldness, right? So I absolutely love that. Now, we've talked about some of the losses of course, the loss of your son, and then some of the trauma that you experienced before your son was born. Let's talk about your business, because you are an entrepreneur, and you talked about some recent losses in September. So let's go there. What happened?
So let me bring it back a little bit. When you talk about loss and disappointment, and when you have this expectation of God and He doesn't do it, you just like you take it to heart sometimes.
Yeah.
So for my book, which I absolutely love, it's a beautiful cover, everything's amazing. I had this whole plan that when this book dropped, God was just gonna everyone was gonna get a copy, millions sold, and it was gonna be amazing. That's not what happened. And so that was my first disappointment when it came to the book. That I believe it's an amazing story. It can still do well. It can still go far. It did sell copies. Let me not act like it didn't. It did sell copies, and it did bless people, which was part of the goal. But it didn't hit like I wanted it to hit. And so because of that disappointment, I turned my attention to focusing on my skincare business. And my skincare business, we've been just like, for the last few years, just building it, going hard, overworking, hustling, kind of the same thing that I did when I had a job, but now I was working for myself. So it's more hustle, more energy into it, just with less pay, because it's for yourself. And so now fast forward to September, we've been working this business for the last few years, and we've had a lot of wins. But I ended up going to Florida for a business conference, and we were preparing to open a second location, like an in-person location where people can come get the hand massages and the wellness services that we do. Because what I've realized over the years is wellness is really important to how a person functions and their day-to-day life. You want to talk about grief? Wellness is the answer. You want to talk about stress? Wellness is the answer. But people don't always know how to do it, and so we wanted to show them the tools and the services that they can use to make it more effective. So we opened a location. We've been working at it for the last 5 months, getting it all together. We decorated, we transformed this space. And the first week of September, it fell apart right as we're about to open it. The location fell apart. And not only did the location fall apart, but because I spent most of my savings, really all of my savings, into getting this location ready for the last 5 months, I didn't put enough attention onto my online business. And so my online business crashed at the same time.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And not a lot of people know it because I don't talk about it fully. I've mentioned it here and there, but I haven't like fully just sat down and been like, so this is what happened. But yeah, my online business fell apart. We just didn't have enough funds to cover both. And the thought was, focus on this location because it's going to open and it's going to make us so much more money that can pour back into the online
space. Yeah.
But it fell apart. And there wasn't a contingency plan on what happens if it doesn't work. I'm very much all or nothing at times. And so I'm like, well, it's going to work. It has to work. And it didn't work. And so for the month of September and up until now in October, I've been, at least for the month of September, I was dealing with the grief of losing a business, of it failing before my eyes, of me putting all my savings into it and for it to crash and burn the way it did. And so when I would go to the garage, so when I came back from Florida, I was on quarantine, but when I would go to the first time I went into the garage, it was all the stuff we had purchased, everything we had purchased, everything we had put up, all the time and effort. And I just cried. And I just got so sad seeing it all in a garage versus the space that it was previously in. And I've finally gotten to a point now, after just taking some time to pray, taking some time to just be at peace, taking some time to just, okay, we're going to re-strategize. I finally got to a point where I don't cry over it. I celebrate it. I said, okay, well, God, you know the reason. And we can do something different in the future. But for now, we got to focus in over here, back onto the online and get that going.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think oftentimes it's the risk that's involved with being an entrepreneur, right? Like we often don't talk about the dark side of it. Like we often talk about, oh, I'm getting this because that's what we see on social media, right? Like the entrepreneur is living it up, and I'm my own boss, and all of the beautiful stuff that comes with it. But then there's the other side, because failure is just part of it.
Yep.
It comes with the territory. And I know for me, because as a writer I do freelance work, and so some months, like there's very little coming in, and it's like, because I don't have that guarantee of a steady paycheck, right? Which is very comforting, when okay, it helps you with your planning. But some months are rather dry, and others are the opposite. So I can relate to that. And I've tried different things, and sometimes things just, you think it's going to work, it makes sense that it should work, well, why wouldn't it work? And then when it doesn't, it's just like, okay, I got to regroup.
Yeah.
And that can really hit hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the importance is taking the time to deal with it. When you don't take the time to deal with it, you just move on to the next thing, and it's an open wound that doesn't get the proper time to heal. And so taking a step back, taking time to sleep more, taking time to focus in on the things that you love to do. I didn't even realize how burnt out I was prior to this pause. And now that I have the pause, I was like, oh, this is nice. Okay. So now in rebuilding, I'm going to make sure we rebuild it so that, I said something this morning to my friend. I said, I'm going to build it so that I'm not building my life around, or I'm not building my life around the business, but I'm building the business around my life.
Yeah.
Making sure that my life is first, the things that I like to do, working out, eating good, reading, all that stuff. And I'm building the business in the extra time versus what I did before is the business came first. No matter what time, place, the business was 24/7, and it didn't leave us in a good space. And so understanding, we preach wellness, but understanding how we also have to apply that to ourselves. And then when you take the time to rest, God will exalt you. God will lift you up. There was 1 week before the website crashed that we took a pause because things were just so many things were happening. In that week of me not doing the business, we made more money than in the weeks that I was constantly working. And so it just showed me that there's honor in taking rest. There's honor in making sure that our bodies and our temples are getting what it needs and what it deserves. And we need to make sure that we are acknowledging when grief happens, because grief, when it goes unacknowledged, it almost forms like a bitter root, and that can turn into disease, that could turn into mental anguish, that could turn into constant stress. There's so many other things. We have to make sure that we are constantly uprooting unforgiveness, uprooting negativity, uprooting all the things that come at us on a daily basis, and make sure that we're replacing it with love, patience, peace, kindness, and the rest of it.
It's continuous work.
It is.
Yeah. But the results of it are beautiful to see. Yeah. Because even just looking at you and knowing the background for your story and just seeing the joy on your face, and I cannot believe it, just this past September, a month ago, you were dealing with the loss of something that you have poured so much time and energy and resources into. And yet here you are, hopeful for the future.
Absolutely. When I went to Florida, I met one of my friends, her pastor, and she just pronounced joy over me. She's like, "This next season is going to be joy." And at the time, I was crying. So I was like, "Okay," but since I come back, it has honestly been joy. Since I've been back, it's been peace. Since I've been back, it's been like, okay, God, what's the next step? What's the next? I sent my book off. It's funny. I sent my book off to a publisher recently, and it was the first time in a while that I got excited again about it, publishing it, because I'd lost some hope. It's the first time I got excited again about publishing it. I was like, oh my gosh, this could be the break that I've been wanting to. I sent it to them. They actually responded to me, which was pretty cool because most people don't.
Yes,
and
that's
they said,
amazing.
Right? They said they'll get back to me in 2 weeks. They got back to me in 2 weeks, and they said they're going to pass on it. And in that moment, I looked at it and I was like, all right, cool. And so we keep going. And so I know the healing has happened. I know the growth has happened. When things are happening all around me, when I keep seeing no's, I keep hearing negatives, and I'm just like, okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
We're going to keep pushing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love to hear that you are just, it's a no. It's not going to hurt you. They're not, it just means that that's not the right fit.
Yes.
Because if they had said yes, and it just would not have worked out for your good, because God is always, everything that happens, He's working things out for our good. And so I love the fact that you see that in your own life. I get excited about that because when I see it in someone else's life, it's reassurance that that's happening in my own life too. So I am so grateful that you share your testimony so openly.
Thank
And it really is, it's amazing to see you as this woman who has come through all of this trauma and all of this pain that really could have broken you, but you have this determination and you have clung to God and you have just, come out of it, and you just like your background. So colorful, and just I'm so excited. I'm so excited for what the future has to hold for you, because I believe like the deepest pains and the deepest disappointments are just a setup for greater things to come. And so I can't wait to see what this next chapter has for you.
Thank you. I truly believe that my goal and my vision is to impact people, is to use my story as a testimony, as to use my story to bring light and to allow people to see that you can come through it. It's funny because like when I published the book 3 years ago, I published it. I wanted people to hear the story. From then, I think in 2018, I had done a couple of prisons and Humber College. I went and I taught from the book. I would teach on the lesson of love, and for the same thing for the individuals in prison, I would teach them from the book on different forgiveness and all these things. And I just saw how impactful it was for them. I have all the feedback, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So this year, I finally decided to turn it into a workbook, into a 10-week workbook where people can read the chapter, follow along, and ask and answer questions that really get the deep thinking, that really gets them to just think on their life and different activities. Because I realized that, yes, it's great as a book, but it's also meant to dig deep into people's lives and allow them to transform and come out better.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great idea. So is the workbook, are you still working on that, or that's available?
I'm still working on it. It'll be available shortly.
Okay, okay. Now, can you hold up your book one more time and let us know where we can find it?
Oh, camera.
There we
You
go.
can
Okay,
find
let me
it.
remove this banner so we can, there we go. Okay.
You can find it on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca. They have the ebook there, as well as the the paperback as well.
Okay, okay. And where do we find you on social media?
I am at Living Cola on Instagram, and that's the main thing. Cola is also on Facebook, but I'm mostly on Instagram. That's how people can contact me. That people can ask me questions all the time. I'm always open for that. So Living Cola, LIVING COLA, and it literally stands for Living Confidently Open, Loving Always. As you can tell, I love acronyms. So
Yes.
always live and love, and that's the goal.
Okay, love it, love it. Thank you so much for
Thank
taking the time to
you.
speak with me. We're gonna pivot into another segment that we have, which is kind of getting to know you and finding out some interesting things about you.
Okay.
So we are gonna, let me bring up the questions here, and then we're gonna dive right into that. So first question, oh, where's my email? Okay, here we go. Um, 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 um. Yes, so what was your favorite toy as a kid?
I play with Barbies.
Oh yeah.
I play the piano. Those are my two favorite. Piano's not really a toy, but those are my two favorite things.
Okay, okay. What's the last thing you ate?
Well, because this morning I had boiled egg with Brussels sprouts and Swiss chard.
Ooh, very nice.
Fancy.
I love boiled eggs, so I can take it. You can't go wrong with a boiled egg.
No, I cannot.
All right, so if you're running extremely late for a very important meeting and had to go and you had to forego a part of your morning routine, what would that be?
It's funny. Before quarantine, it probably would have been like exercise or something. But post quarantine, I've been very consistent with that. Uh, It would be, honestly, it would be my skincare. Like I would just like forego. I would just dash some water, throw some lotion like this, and just run out the house. That's what it would look like.
Yeah. Okay, okay. What is your favorite beauty product?
It's a body scrub, and I
Ah,
don't think it would be, but it definitely is a body scrub.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me what your typical a day like, what a typical day is like for you?
Yeah, so I wake now. A typical day is I wake up, I lay in bed with. I like to sleep under the window because there's something very peaceful about the sun beating down on my face. And
Mm,
I talk to God that way if I'm not writing letters. So my morning is I pray for everybody who I can. And then I typically go into like some type of music and I do a workout. My workout is about 12 minutes long, but I'm really focused on making sure I get that done. Then shower and then I figure out what has to get done for the day. Now, this is a routine that I've only recently come up with, but it's giving me a lot more peace. So I pretty much take the whole morning. I don't start my day until after like 12, 1 o'clock. It gives me enough time to really settle myself, really be at peace. If I have to start it earlier, I will, but I try not to. And then I just go into seeing what I need to do either for the book or for the skincare products, and I get those things done. When it comes to night, I normally just relax. Either now I'm on the phone talking to friends, or I read a book or something that can progress me forward before I take a nice shower and relax.
okay. Very nice. Very nice. We have something in common in that I don't like to have busy mornings. I try to keep my morning as free as possible because for me it's just like setting the tone for the day. Like I like to like ease into that, and maybe the earliest I'll begin to do some work is maybe around 10 or so. But I really like my morning hours, and before I would get up and go for my walk in the mornings, then come back and as I'm walking, I'm either listening to a sermon or I'm listening to some podcast or something about like mindset or just business, owning a business and entrepreneur or anything like that. Listening to leaders, something that's gonna kind of prepare me for the day.
Yes.
And then I would do that, and then I would come back and just spend that time with God and just talk to him about whatever is going on. I also like to write letters to God. It was so strange in the beginning because I would dear God, and then I'll just write stuff, and but then it's my way of communicating because as you can probably appreciate too, being a poet, it's just something about words and writing things down that it just I just enjoy that.
Yeah.
And
Do you write
so,
responses?
sorry,
You write responses to yourself?
I don't write responses.
Okay, okay. I write
Tell
responses.
me, tell me, how do you do that?
So I had this mentor in a while back, and she said you write the letter, you wash your hands. I don't always wash my hands, but you said you wash your hands and then you write it. Whatever comes to mind, you just write it out. So I don't actually do the washing hands part anymore. But I write the letter, write out everything I need to, and then I just take a pause, and then I write the response. So I said I write dear daughter or hey quote something, and then I just write
Oh,
the response and I sign it from God. And
oh
it's been
wow.
really, really powerful doing both.
Oh yes, because it's kind of like you're writing what you're receiving from him
Yeah,
in that moment.
yeah,
Wow, that's
it's
really
really
good.
good. I did it the other day. So I had a friend of mine, or this guy that I was looking to talk to, and so it's the first time it's the first time I've talked to a guy since my engagement break off, and so I brought it to God, and this is the first time I brought somebody to God, and I wrote a letter of like what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and then I wrote God's response, and he really like downloaded some stuff for me, and I was like, oh, okay. And it gave me so much peace. So I like writing responses. I may not always get them right, but if I reread it, if I feel peace about it, I can sometimes pick out different things. I'm like, okay, cool, we can move on from here.
Yeah, and that's so because oftentimes even when we're praying or when we're in like a season of turmoil or something like that, and sometimes you hear God telling you things. And now like I love that idea because now I'm gonna be more conscious of just writing that down because it just becomes more real when you write it down. It's on
It
paper.
does. It does.
Yeah,
It
there it
does.
is. Ah, thank you for sharing that. So the next question is, if you could switch places with anybody, past or present, for one day, who would that be?
That's a very good question. This one actually, I don't really know. It might be my great grandma, to be honest.
On your
This,
mother's side or your father's
yeah, on
side?
my mother's side, she's still alive.
Okay.
But just to see how she lived, just to understand where she came from, to be in the Jamaican sun and to climb trees and all that kind of stuff, just to see the legacy that she was leaving for the rest of us.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Tea. Okay, me too. I love my tea.
I love tea. I love tea.
Um, so, okay, I just forgot the question that came to me and now I forgot it. Okay, what's your least favorite chore?
Laundry.
Mm.
I do not like laundry. I'm gonna have to marry a man who likes laundry because I do not.
Listen, from your lips to God's ears, God needs to send you somebody who loves to do laundry because as
Absolutely.
we speak, I have laundry on my bed that needs to be folded and put away. Came out of the dryer and now it's all wrinkled now. But I
Yep. That's exactly why. I just
What is your biggest pet peeve?
Inconsiderate people.
Mm,
People who treat you a way that they wouldn't want to be treated. People who just don't think of others, who just like um they just do things a certain way. And you're like, what would you like that to be done to you? Like people
yeah.
are just really inconsiderate. They're not they think of themselves mostly and they're just not kind. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. People who are just unkind and inconsiderate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's the golden rule. Treat others the way that you want to be treated.
Absolutely.
What are you most proud of?
Surviving. Um No, it would be surviving. I am most proud of the fact that I survived. The fact that I didn't allow life to take me out. The fact that I trusted God and I continue to trust Him even in my darkest seasons, even in my challenging seasons. The fact that I have a book and I wrote it out. The fact that I started a business and I'm still doing it. People told me get a job. And I'm like, I don't think I'm made for that. And I stuck to it. And then boom, COVID hit and everybody lost, not everybody, but a lot of people lost their jobs. And I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
well, I didn't want to get one. But I am most proud of surviving and continuing to inspire others as I do live. That I'm not just living without purpose, that every day that I get up, every day that I speak, every day that I do something differently, I have the opportunity to preach the good word and heal many people.
Yeah, yeah. And it's that's a great thing to be proud of because like I say, like your journey is one that is riddled with all kinds of trauma and pain, and you have survived. You really have. And God has held you in the palm of his hand and he's kept you all these years. He
Yeah.
has kept you. And so I'm so grateful to have connected paths with you. I'm so grateful that we were able to reconnect again. I'm just wishing you all of God's richest blessings because I know you're just on the cuff of some great things that He's about to do for you. Let's keep in touch, and I'll be grateful to just hear from you from time to time. Let me know what you're up to, what's going on with the skincare line. Let us know so we can tell our people, tell our audience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I say
Yeah.
one of my favorites is the body scrub, I'm sitting in my office anyways. This is literally one of my favorite products. It
Okay. Great.
is, I can hear it.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. There we go.
Oh, is it? Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. Can you tilt it a little bit more? There we go. Okay. And that's the body scrub.
It is one of our body scrubs. This is
Okay.
my favorite because it literally brings peace. It's a combination of like lavender, rain blossom. It's called Serenity for that exact reason. It's blue inside. It just overall washes you with just a sense of like, okay, I'm gonna be okay. It has African black soap in it, so it cleanses you as you're
Hey.
starting, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's definitely a premium product, and it's one of my favorites because God has given me the gift of hands, the gift to create, the gift to breathe life into products, and so I'm extremely grateful for that gift and that what it continues to allow me to do. And so it's been a blessing.
Yeah. So is the website, is that back up yet, or can we
It's
look for
I'll
it?
be up by the end of today.
Yeah, there we go. There we
Today.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, please send me the link so that we can
Yeah.
include this. And when I upload this, the video, then we can have that there so people can go check out your products
Okay.
and support. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank
People,
you.
please go out and get her book. It's on Amazon. It's C.O.L.A, Casualty of Love's Apologies. It's a great read. And it just shows that your life doesn't have to end
Yes.
when you lose somebody you love, or when you lose an opportunity, or when you're disappointed. God is there and he will walk you through that journey if we accept his hand of help. So you
Mhm.
are a living testimony of that, what God can do with the painful season in our lives. So thank you again.
Thank you so
Wishing you
much.
all the best.
Thank
And
you.
for now, take care. And yeah, hope to see you soon doing some more things on social media and
Absolutely.
just living God's best life for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Goodbye for now.